I knew a dog named Maggie, used to follow me around my hometown. She looked like a wolf, she laughed like a hyena, she cast no shadow on the ground. All the stray dogs in my neighborhood barked and howled as I passed by, but Maggie never showed me her teeth, she never left my side. Maggie the mud is frightening someone for those that do not know. And Maggie the mud ain't nothing but a reflection of my soul.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Fueled by Joy podcast. This is episode 5, part 2 with Mr. Shaun Rydl. The first part was excellent. I think the second part's even better, which is going to be, which I didn't think was possible, but it is. So stay tuned. You're going to love it. And I would like to start off this podcast by thanking everybody that is listening. We have really exceeded our expectations as far as downloads, where we're ranking on the charts, things like that, and we really appreciate it. It helps us spotlight all these fantastic handlers and hunters and trainers of these awesome dogs. And, you know, like I said, we're humbled by it. We're thankful for it, and we really appreciate you all listening. So remember, give us a good rating on wherever you're getting your podcast, because that's what bumps us up to the top of the charts. That's what increases our listeners, and that's what helps us spread the word. And so, like I said, really thankful, really appreciative. We can't be, I mean, we're giddy, I guess would be the word. We're giddy over how well this podcast is doing. It like I said, it's exceeded all expectations, and that is because of you, our listener. And man, we're really stoked about it. So enjoy this part 2. Shaun goes into great depth and detail on a lot of things that I think you guys are going to be interested in. And so, like I said, we really appreciate you. Thank you for listening, and enjoy.
Do you have a hardworking dog? How about a mom about to give birth to some pups? Our Super Meal 30/20 is perfect for either scenario. With a whopping 510 kcals per cup, your dog will have more energy than ever before. It will also help keep your dog in top shape even while working or nursing pups. The added pumpkin will not only help with a healthier stool, but it also provides added calcium, which will help with lactation. Added magnesium will help with muscle repair, and the added vitamin B will help not only mama, but her pups thrive. And of course, our key ingredients, omega-3 and 6 fatty acids, glucosamine and chondroitin, vitamin E and zinc, will help keep them healthy from the inside out with a shinier coat, healthier joints, and a healthier immune system. Over 75 years with no recalls and 100% American made, you can rest assured you are feeding your dog the best bang for your buck. Get Super Meal today. Call 800-245-4125 or visit joydogfood.com.
Everywhere there's quail, it seems like they're here one day and gone the next.
Yep.
But what about, because I mean, these trials I assume are pretty hard work on a dog.
Yeah.
I mean, they're probably going through a lot of physical stress as well. Does the hunting help as far as, because you run Garmin's on your dogs?
Yeah, I run
How many
Garmin's.
miles would they cover in a day of hard hunting? Have you checked?
They'll cover over 20 miles in a half day.
Yeah. Because, I mean, our hounds cover a lot of miles,
Yeah.
but it's straight miles.
Yeah.
You know, say I get a dog he's a mile deep. He's probably done a mile and a half to get to that mile, and he's treed, and I walk in there and I recut him. He may go a half mile or something like that. So, 5 or 6, 7 miles in a 4 or 5 hour hunt's pretty common. But I remember when I had 7, we didn't have Garmin's back when I was hunting. I just ran a regular old chalking system, and I couldn't map their speed or anything like that. But you look at the ground them dogs cover on a daily basis, it's unreal.
They'll cover 20 miles in a half day.
I mean, that's a lot for a pack of lion hounds.
Yeah.
That's a lot for any hound, So what does the conditioning, hunting prepare them for the field trial stuff?
Yeah, and then I condition. I don't condition every day. A couple times a week, I run them off. I've got a 4-wheeler set up with roding bars on it.
Yep.
And I use the harnesses.
Yep.
Off the roding bars, and I believe in that.
Yeah, I do too.
I don't free run my dogs a lot in the field unless I have birds out there for them. A lot of guys will go to field trial grounds and they'll hop on a 4-wheeler and run their dog all around the field and then wonder why their dog just running around the field Mach 10, not doing anything.
You want them dogs to know the difference between we're just exercising and we're actually out here working.
If I take my dog to a trial field setting, there's birds out there.
Yeah.
I want them dialed in.
Now you shoot the birds.
Yep.
And so you got to be a pretty decent shot.
I wish I had kept track of how many training birds, and I know I've wore out half a dozen
How
shotguns.
sickening is it when your dog does just a bang up job and you miss that bird? I mean, that's got to be.
Knock on wood. I don't know how long it's been since I missed one.
I probably shouldn't have brought it up.
I mean,
then.
you might have jinxed me.
I might be in your head at the next trial.
Yeah.
So it's not a miss. I assume is not common whenever you guys are doing this.
Not really.
Yeah.
And it's a killer when you miss one.
Yeah.
If you're giving up that retrieve or.
Well, one thing you said you wild bird hunt
Yeah.
hard. Tame birds ain't wild birds when it comes to shooting.
No.
You know.
You'll see some of these. There's always new guys. You see some of these rookies that can't hit pin race birds, and you're like.
They haven't been wild bird. They probably can't hit a wild bird either. Because I know when you're walking in a North Missouri or Southern Iowa fence row, and especially I hunted by myself a lot too.
Mm-hmm. And they're always out the other side.
Your dogs are always on your side, and you try to get them in wherever you can get them in. But they're always some of the quail are always going out the other. You're shooting through the brush and stuff like that. I think of a big, fat, corn-fed pheasant that you got to kick up. That's like shooting a beach ball.
I've always said that there's.
But I've never had to shoot one of those under any kind of pressure either.
I've always said that there's nothing with more will to live than a wild quail.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, they know how to get away from you.
Yeah.
And even when they're shot, they know how to get away from you.
Yep. And you wouldn't, and they're so, everything eats a quail. Mm-hmm. Everything eats a quail egg. I mean, for one, I don't blame them because they're delicious.
Yeah.
But them are, just the fact that you get one of them plum thickets around here or around my house, something like that, them things can run too. They run like a pheasant sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
And so on the pin rate, that was another thing I was going to ask you. Like when I went to Montana the first year, and I've got a dog that he was 7 when I went out there the first time. And he had been on every pheasant he had ever smelled in his life, ran like a pheasant in Iowa or South Dakota or Kansas does. They all run like crazy. They run like freaking turkey. And the pheasants out there had never been hunted, had never been pressured where I'm hunting on this ranch, and so they didn't run. And it threw him for a loop for a long time. Is that an adjustment that your dogs ever have to make?
Yeah, and your good dogs figure that out. You see your good dogs figure those running pheasants out.
Yeah.
But it's that way in Montana. Where we hunt out there, you might you have dogs on point, and you're going to a point, and 2 sharp tails get up, and the dogs are still standing there on point. And you get up there, and there's a rooster.
Yeah, my dogs didn't do that.
There's a rooster pheasant in there that was right there with those sharp tails, so you never know what's coming up.
Yeah. So I mean, like in our sport, there's levels, and it's not. These dogs are, and I say they're at the top of their game, and it's not that they're at the top of their game, that they're any more talented than a meat dog or anything like that, but it's just so hard to train what we want to train. That's what makes it so difficult. And I assume it's the same way with your sport, because I mean,
I don't think it's as hard for us to train what we want to train as it is, with you, that like we were talking about earlier tonight, because we have a lot more control.
Yeah.
We can see what our dog's doing, at all times, and when you're training, you've got an e-collar available to use to make adjustments, or if you're trying to turn that dog and get a little bit more handle on it, you've got the e-collar to teach it that, or little things like that.
Yeah.
Or maybe you got a dog that's creeping in on point, you can rig it up have a belly collar on him so you can make those adjustments. I think it's probably harder with what you do to where you can't see your dog all the time. It's dark, they're in the woods, or, you know.
And one of the big mistakes that houndsmen make is correcting at a time when they shouldn't be.
Right.
And it's such a hard decision to make. Sometimes it's a split. I don't know how many times I've had a finger on a button thinking a dog's doing something it's not supposed to do, and I'm just hearing things wrong, or I'm seeing things on my tracking system wrong, or something like that.
Yeah.
And, you know, when I was doing the retrievers and I was doing the bird dogs and the things like that too, I could tell, 15, 30 minutes a day with a retriever, you're out in the yard, you're doing water work, you're doing blind work, and, you know, you can see 99.9% of the time, unless they're on some long blind or something, you know you're going to see what they're doing.
Yep, exactly.
But still, we're taking, you know, when you're looking at trial dogs, that's the best of the best. And some people that don't trial are not going to see it that way because they're going to, the dogs are too, what I hear, you know, all those dogs are too wild. All those dogs go too far. But I've always said, well, you can make them come closer. You can take all that out of them, you know.
I hear it all the time. I'll have somebody hunting with me, and he says, hey, your dog's clear up there like 200 yards. And I said, yeah. And he says, well, what if he flushes the bird? I said, he's not going to flush the bird.
Yeah.
You know, he'll point the bird and he'll stand there. And, you know, these shoot to retrieve fields that we're running on are usually 40-acre fields.
Yeah.
It's a quarter mile to the back of the field. They always run to the back of the field and find, not always find the first bird, but a lot of times they'll run to the back of the, you get two competitive dogs, head running each other. They may end up, they got to stand there.
Yeah, so that happens to you guys too, then.
But I don't think I think there's a lot of people that maybe don't understand,
Right.
you know, different sports or what the dog's really supposed to do. Or I think there's guys that own pointing dogs that hunt them like a flushing dog.
Yeah.
You know, maybe they never really even point the birds.
I was guilty of that until I got a dog with some actual talent. Mm-hmm. And even then, I just about messed her up. You know, she would be 80, 90 yards, and I'm over here freaking out because I'm used to these dogs that didn't have as good a nose and that weren't focused all the time flushing birds. And these were still dogs you could keep close, and if they flushed one, you'd still get a shot, and they'd point a lot of birds too. But Peanut was her name. And she'd be pointing. She was the first dog I had to put a tracking collar on, a bird dog. And I got to where finally I could just hunt her like a coon dog. You know, I could send her up a fence row, and she got to the end, and she'd come back, and she saved me a lot of steps, and she was really light-footed, and she had a really good nose, and she knew how to hunt, you know, what direction the wind was and stuff like that. So a lot of it is your dogs are talented. You know, I mean, I think that's, you know, 80% of why some of these people don't understand, because those dogs are just better than theirs. I mean, I don't want to be rude, but that's the facts.
And a lot of people, we all love to shoot birds.
Yes.
And it takes great discipline to take a dog out there that maybe isn't broke and not doing it right and not shoot that bird for them. Yeah. You know, we talked about it earlier about killing coon for dogs that aren't really treeing them. You know, and it's the same way with bird dogs.
Yeah.
If you're shooting birds for that dog that's in motion or flushing that bird, all you're doing is reinforcing them to be a flushing dog.
Yep.
And it is discipline. I mean, we let a lot of birds fly with young dogs that we don't ever kill until they do it right.
And see, that's one thing and of course I never competed with them, so I was just out there to see if I could maybe scratch out 4 or 5 quail, you know, in a day by myself or something like that, or a couple of roosters, you know. And I'm glad you brought that up because I never even thought of it.
Yeah.
You know, we woe broke our dogs, and we made sure they were steady to shot as much as we could. They weren't always, but that's about as far as we went.
Yep, and that's the discipline. I always have the luxury of usually having 5 or 6 or 7 dogs in my kennel.
Yeah.
You know, ranging in ages from puppies all the way to 8, 9, 10-year-old
or
dogs.
16.
Yeah. And you know, there's times you go out and you hunt with your broke dogs and you kill birds, and then there's times you go out with your pups and you know you're out there training.
Yeah.
And if they do it right, you know, you kill it for them, and that's usually when the light bulb turns on the brightest. You know, and you can see it
when you're say you're just hunting. You're not worried about trial, and you're in the middle of a week in Montana. How many dogs you turning loose at one time?
I'm usually hunting with a bunch of other guys.
Yeah.
So it depends on what we got on the ground. But it's awful hard to keep track of more than 2 dogs at once.
I never
Yeah.
did like turning
Yeah.
loose more than 2 at a time either.
I'd just as soon have one. If I'm by myself, I might turn 2 or 3 loose. It's
Yeah.
easier to keep track of them. But usually 1 or 2 on the ground.
And we've all had this. We've all been through it. Anybody who's ever bird hunted for longer than an hour or 2 is going to go on a trip with some guys they don't know, and they're going to have some dog that sucks, and they're going to turn it loose, and they're going to completely ruin your hunt.
Oh.
So I know you've seen it. You got don't mention any names,
No, yeah.
but can you think of any dog that comes to mind?
Oh, yeah. You see it all the time. And I don't want to be that guy that...
Yeah. And I may have been that
Yeah.
guy before. I don't think I was, but there may be some guy sitting out in western Kansas somewhere right now going, man, you remember that idiot from Missouri that brought that junk dog out here?
I know what I have, and I know how many hours I spend getting my dogs ready to do what I want, and maybe a little bit higher level. My wife accuses me of being psychotic about it, that I
Yeah.
live in my kennel building or spend more time with the dogs, and I probably do. But so I got to be careful.
Yeah.
Because I have friends that aren't as serious about
Right,
it as me.
right.
And
it's not like we don't want those guys to hunt too.
yeah, and I love them all,
Yeah.
and some of them got great meat dogs, and some
Yeah.
of them got pretty good trial dogs, and I'm not ever saying that everything that I've got is the best, but you run into guys, and I try to make it my goal every year to get one new guy in the sport,
Yeah.
whether it's a young guy or a guy that, I give a lot of my old dogs away.
Yeah.
They get 8, 9 years old, and maybe I'm not going to field trial them anymore, and they've got still 3, 4, 5 years of good hunting left
Yep.
in them. Perfect opportunity to give somebody
bet.
a fully broke dog. They might be a 2-time champion or 3-time champion or whatever. That's the best way to get people started.
I knew when I was 16, 17 years old and I'm searching around for a bird dog, and I don't know anybody with bird dogs, I'd have killed for that opportunity.
Yeah.
To have a broke dog that you could go out and shoot birds over, I mean, that's good for any youngster, or even, it don't even have to be a young person, just anybody that wants to start out.
I don't keep very many of them to where they're 16,
Yeah.
like Bandit is.
Yeah.
I usually give them away and let them retire at somebody else's house,
Yeah.
and then I don't have to be around
Yeah.
them, and I can always be bringing something else up.
Yeah, we do the same thing with our hounds.
And I know people say, "Well, how can you do that?" And the special ones, they're going to live and die at my house, but most of them don't end up dying here.
Yeah.
I give them away. I give them to my brother. I give them to nephews. I give them to complete strangers.
There's nothing wrong, because you take excellent care of your dogs. This is one of the nicest, cleaner kennels I've been to, and I go to a lot of nice kennels with a lot of guys that have valuable dogs and take very good care of them. Your dogs are all in fantastic shape. They'll look great. They get the best of care. They get a loving home if you're into that kind of thing. But there's nothing wrong with letting someone else enjoy that dog.
Mm-hmm.
You know where it's going. You know, it ain't like you're just giving them to any
Yeah,
Joe
yeah.
Schmo down the street, And so there's nothing wrong with letting somebody enjoy that dog in the waning years and you starting another one.
Yep.
I mean, I can't see any fault in that whatsoever.
It's worked out great, and I have friends of mine saying, when you going to retire another dog?
Yeah,
When you going
yeah.
to retire another dog? And it's a great setup.
Yeah.
Anybody that has the opportunity to do that, it's good.
You talk about getting new people involved in the sport, and there's 2 debates as far as the hound hunting goes. You get a lot of the older pleasure hunters that we're used to seeing 65, 70 dogs at a local event that say it's a dying sport. And then you get guys on my end that are saying, well, there's 10 times as many hunts now. The hunts are spread out, but we've got more positive feedback. We've kind of mainstreamed the sport a little bit. I mean, I got friends hunting for $100,000 tomorrow night. We just won a truck 2 weeks ago. You couldn't do that back in the early 80s. What about not just the competition part, but let's just say just the regular old guys that just want to go out and shoot some birds? Of course, the bird population has a big factor here too. Right. But are you seeing, is it on the rise? Is it kind of steady? Is it going down? Or
I think with the pheasants in Iowa that have bounced back good the last 3 or 4 years, that's really helped the bird dog deal. You see a lot more younger guys these 20-year-old and 22 and 3-year-old guys now that are getting interested in bird dogs, to where I think there's a part of this the last generation, these 30-year-old guys that went through, they didn't have good bird numbers.
Yeah.
You see those guys are they're turkey hunters or they're bow hunting deer, doing something like that. But our events, we've got great numbers.
Yeah.
I'm chairing a trial this weekend down in Osceola, and we normally limit it to 32 dogs, and I drew it a little bit different. I drew it as a 64 dog open because I had like 48 dogs entered. I wanted to get everybody in the trial. You may not have 4 runs, you might only have 3 runs, but I want to grasp the new people.
Yeah.
If they can't get in, then they're going to go do something else. So it's been like I said, it's a goal of mine to get new guys in and keep growing the sport and get those guys interested in buying a pup from you and learning from you. And, I've got 2 or 3 guys that I sold puppies last year that I think are going to be great in this game,
Yeah.
But it's our job. I think it's our job to pay it forward and to pass what we know down to these guys and the young guys. And, I'm 52. 20 years ago, Terry Prentice was 55.
Yep.
He was a stud in the sport then, and it's my job to bring somebody else along.
Yeah. You couldn't have said it any better. We try to do the same thing. I leave first thing tomorrow morning for the Trader Inc. Youth Championship and the Missouri State Youth Championship, and then I go down to Louisiana for the Louisiana State Youth Championship. And so bringing the kids up is important. I mean, if we don't replace ourselves, there's going to be nobody here to do it down the road. And so, like I said, I don't care if it's Bandit here's 15 years old, he had to replace himself. We got to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And, it's when you look at competing with dogs, sometimes it gets a bad rap, in certain circles because they just don't understand it. And there's this theory that, we're done with them whenever we're done with them and things like that. But when you're breeding dogs and you're raising them and your bloodline keeps going on, I mean, that's something that's going to pass on down through the generations. That's something you're going to have on in the future. I
guarantee you these dogs are taken better care of than some people take care of themselves.
Exactly.
And it's not like we have a lot of puppies or a puppy mill or anything like that. We probably average a litter, maybe a litter and a half a year, just depending on what we want for ourselves.
What you need or what current breeding's coming up or something like that.
But they're well taken care of.
Yeah. Old Bandit here doesn't look abused by any means.
No, he's not.
I can't believe how good a shape. I mention this every time I come over here, and that dog's 15 coming 16.
Yep, he'll be 16 the 1st of August.
Tell me about him. What you mentioned it before we started the podcast, what all that dog has won and why he's living in this house.
He, like I said, he's a 10-time Master champ. And to get a Master championship, maybe guys don't know, but when you go to a regular weekend trial, if you win that 32-dog trial, you get 3 championship points.
Yeah.
If you get 2nd place, you get 2, and if you get 3rd place, you get 1.
Right.
And when you
nothing gets a point past 3rd place. Okay.
When you accumulate 18 points, half of those being 1st place points, they'll award you your first championship.
And he's done that 10 times.
Yeah, he's a 10-time champion. So
he had to have at least like 90 first places.
I think he's got 200 and something weekend trial points. So that's a lot of trophies. That's a lot of gift certificates and trophies and stuff. And then, like I said, he's the only dog to ever win the Midwest Regional Championship twice.
Yeah.
That deal's hard to win. It's hard to win once. He won it in 2011 and again in 2014.
You mentioned what makes a good trial dog. What made him so special and cut him out above the rest?
He was probably one of the classiest dogs that ran.
Yeah.
I mean, he's very, very I mean, people will tell me, God, that Bandit was the prettiest dog I ever saw on point. His head was high, his tail was high. He was dead broke. He didn't step. You could let him stand there all day. When he was backing another dog or honoring another dog on point, he hit his backs like most dogs hit their
Yeah.
points. He ran fast. He was smart. He's the smartest dog I've ever owned.
I was going to ask that. How does brains come in to being a successful competitor in that?
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. It's he always knew what I needed him to do
Yeah.
out there. You know, I'd cut him loose and let him do his thing, and if I needed something, I could call on him. It was almost like he knew. You know, I had numerous judges ride up to me when I was running him in his heyday and, you know, just shake their head. He's like, man, he knows exactly what you need him to do. He, I didn't raise Bandit. I bought him as a young dog. Actually, I ran against him at Dog of the Year out in Indiana. God, I can't remember the year. Probably 13, 14 years ago now. And a guy by the name of Ed Murdoch owned him. Ed owned his dad. His dad, Skipper, was a 15-time champion.
Yeah.
He was a good dog too. But I said, man, that dog is pretty. And he had about 4 young dogs that same age. And I said, if you ever want to sell one of them, I'd like to buy that Bandit dog. And he said, I'm probably going to keep him. And then later that spring, he called me and said, I think I want to sell that Bandit dog. And the truth about it is they had him screwed up. They'd put way too much pressure on him. And he'd run right out in the field and lock up on point, and he wouldn't move whether he had a bird or not. If there was a feather there or anything, he was so broke.
He was overbroke.
Yeah. And he says he ain't gonna make a trial dog. He says I'm gonna sell him. And I said, what do you want for him? And he said, I'll take $1,500 for him. And I said, I'll buy him.
Yeah, pretty good money.
Yeah,
pretty good deal on your end as far as.
So I brought him home that summer and unbroke him.
How long did that take?
I spent the summer doing it.
Yeah.
It was probably, I got him in May, and you'd take him out to a bird field, and he'd lock up on point, and you couldn't get him off point. He was dead broke, and finally I figured out that if I went over and petted him and rubbed up on him and healed him away, that I could get him to go with me. And so I started putting birds out for him, and if he'd point where I knew there wasn't a bird, I'd mark my birds. If he pointed where there wasn't a bird, I'd go up and move him away. And if he pointed where I knew there was a bird, I'd go in and kick the bird up, never said a word, killed it for him. And that in September 1st, Labor Day weekend, when we started our fall trial season, I had a championship on him in 1 month.
Yeah.
In the month of September, which is, a lot of guys say if you put a championship on him in a fall or a spring, you're doing good. And I was averaging 2-3 championships a year with him, running hard.
Joy Dog Food Adult Performance is made to fuel your dog with energy, strength, and stamina. Our Chicken First formula is formulated without any soy and made with pumpkin to help with sensitive stomachs. Our key ingredients, omega-3 and 6 fatty acids, glucosamine and chondroitin, and zinc and vitamin E, will have your dog in top shape from the outside in with a shinier coat, healthier joints, and a stronger immune system. Made with all-American ingredients and over 75 years without a single recall, you can rest assured that you are feeding your dog the best bang for your buck. Call 800-245-4125 or visit joydogfood.com to find a dealer near you.
And we're back. Somebody forgot to check the batteries in his pocket. I got caught up in this conversation, and I just could not. I didn't even look down at my podcast to see my battery's about dead.
So, I spent that summer pretty much unbreaking him and took him into the fall season, and we put a championship on him right away, and the rest is history. And, you know, I campaigned him pretty hard. We ran all over.
Does it affect the dogs? Because I know, like in our sport, the harder we hunt them, some dogs thrive in hunts. Mm-hmm. Some dogs just eat it up, but they're very rare. Do you have to do, you know, while you're going through all the trials and you're going through a real hard trial season, do you have to, you know, give the dog a break? Do you have to let it go out and let it have some fun where there's no pressure or anything like that?
I think with him, he thrived on it.
Yeah, he was just one of those dogs.
And I always tell people he's a smart enough dog, and his sons and daughters are the same way he was. You show him something, you show him what you want, you train him the right way. they're going to do all they can do to please you. I mean, they're lifelong companions. There's a guy down in Missouri named Jack Glover who's a great dog man, and he told me one day, he said, he actually owned Bandit's mom when she was young. He told me one day, he says, I watch Bandit on that stakeout, and he never takes his eye off you the whole time. Wherever you go, he's got his eye on you. And he said, you've got a connection with that dog. And that was, he made that statement before I really started winning a lot with him. But, you pick up things like that. Sometimes it's not all what you know. Sometimes it's what people point out to you. That resonated with me.
Yeah.
Your dogs, are they paying attention to you? Do you have a connection with them? And this is a line of dogs where you can't be heavy-handed. You can't beat on these dogs. I know that there's guys that say, oh, I'm going to, if they take a step, I'm going to beat on them or whatever. And I believe that's probably what happened to Bandit, why he was overbroke.
Well, that's another thing. Dogs with a certain level of intelligence don't react well to that. Mm-hmm. They have long memories, super long memories.
Yep.
And they remember any kind of correction that you give them. And when you take something like that stagnates them, that takes a long time for a lot of dogs if you don't do it right to get that out of their system.
You can ruin them. Terry Prentice taught me years ago that you put the pressure on that dog to break it, to get it to stand, to will break it or whatever. And every dog's got an out. They're taking steps.
Yeah.
Their tails are flagging. They're laying down. They're false pointing. Those are all ways of getting out of the pressure.
Yeah. What one thing I do want to ask you before we close this out is when most people like me from the outside looking in see these large bird dog trials and these guys are competing with bird dogs, and it's gotten to this point in my sport too. Most of these guys are pro handlers. They're not breeders, trainers, and handlers. A lot of guys will take their dog back during bird season and they'll bird hunt it and then they'll send it to a trainer, which is great because I want all these trainers to do well too. And it's the same way when we had retrievers. They'd get sent off to get force fetched. They would spend the summer with the trainer trialing, and then these guys would get them back for duck season and they'd hunt them. And most of the time, I'm guessing they screwed them up by the end of duck season, and then send them back to the trainer to get fixed. But is that the case? Are most of the guys you're competing against breeders, or are they just handlers?
The neat thing about National Shoot to Retrieve trials, and there are some pros that play the game, and there's some guys that train dogs for a living that you run against. But there's not a lot of huge cash awards.
Yeah.
They have merchandise and dog food and apparel and stuff like that. So for the most part, it's kept the big money out of it. It's the shoot to retrieve guys are mostly guys that want to extend their hunting season.
Yeah.
That want to do more than just bird hunt three months a year.
Yep.
And you can run a national shoot to retrieve trial anywhere in the country at any given time.
Yeah.
Down south they're trialing all winter. They're still trialing in Canada now.
Yeah.
So the availability to go extend your hunting season, so to speak, is there.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. All this stuff's cool, Shaun. Is there anything you want to add before we get done? I know you because I think it was you that called me first about Joy Dog Food.
Yeah, yep.
You gave me a call and you said, hey, there's a bunch of other Now, my partner on all the hounds, Jed Finley, at one point just lived like 3 miles from here.
Yeah.
And I've drove by your house 100 times going with him to go hunting, and I never even noticed the kennels or anything, wasn't paying any attention. But Bruce Murphy, he's just right up the road. He's got a bunch of dogs. He's a Joy customer. Terry Prentice, who we've spoken about before, is just not too far from here. He's a Joy customer. So I've got to meet all you guys through Joy Dog Food, and I can't thank you guys enough, not only for being Joy customers, but also for, enlightening me because, like I say, I'm a dog guy. All dogs are cool.
Well, I actually fed Joy Dog Food 35 years ago. When I had my first bird dog, I could get Joy Dog Food, and Brian Camper called me up. I don't know what it was, maybe 6 months ago, a year ago, and said, "Hey, I'm going to send you a bag of dog food. I want you to try this stuff."
Yeah.
And I said, "Man, I fed Joy years ago and really, really liked it." And so I called Wade one day and had a conversation with Wade, and you can just tell when you talk to a guy.
Yeah.
Some guys, when strike up a conversation, you look down, you've been talking to them for 40 minutes on the phone about nothing, dogs and dog food. And I've been nothing but happy with the service, with the price, with the results. You can walk down my kennel right now, all those dogs look great.
They do look
the dogs
great.
that I've been running and hunting, and they've got muscle, the weight's on them, their hair coat's good, their eyes are good, everything's good. I'm very happy.
Well, we're very happy to have you too, Shaun. You and Bruce and Terry and everybody up in this area that's like a little mini bird dog capital up here southwest of Indianola.
I tell people all the time that's why I say you can come to my kennel anytime. I love to sit and talk about bird dogs.
Yeah, I do too. I like dogs, and the reason that I like, because I'm a setter. I mean, I love English because I think that's what I know this is probably going to make the pointer guys mad, but that's what a bird dog ought to look like.
That's what I think.
You know what I mean? Yeah. When them things point and they do it right, and man, they are just gorgeous animals, and they got heart and they got brains, which. They're German. Don't get me wrong. There's German short hairs and English pointers and Vizslas and all kinds of other stuff that can do the same thing. But setters have a special place in my heart too. Yep. So, thank you for sitting down with me, Shaun. I really appreciate it. We appreciate your support for Joy and you being a customer, and we appreciate you doing the podcast.
Thank you. Anytime.
All right. This is Josh Michaelis, and this is the Fueled by Joy podcast, and we appreciate you listening. Wow, that was fantastic. I really enjoyed sitting down and talking dogs with Shaun. I can sit down and talk for hours about any working dog, and English setters, like I said, have always had a soft spot in my heart, so this was an easy interview. I mean, it was a piece of cake. Shaun was very gracious and courteous, and I really thank him for letting us do it. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure and stay tuned for next week. We're going to have some more great content for you. Appreciate you listening, and we will close you out with a little bit of Maggie the Mutt. Thanks a bunch.
She'll never die of starvation, although she'll never eat. Maggie the Mutt, full of bravery and guts, and always at my feet. Her ribs are showing, her howl is long, but she refuses to die. Maggie will live 100 years longer than I. Maggie the Mutt's always down in a rut, looking for some bone that she buried. Maggie the Mutt don't get scars, only cuts. She loves me and will not share me. Oh, she loves me and will not share me. Those that do not know, Maggie the Mutt ain't nothing but a reflection of my soul. Oh, Maggie the Mutt's always down in a rut, looking for some bone that she buried. Maggie the Mutt don't get scars, only cuts. She loves me and will not share me. Oh, she loves me and will not share me. Oh, she loves me and will not ever share me.